And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. So today we are doing the Encanto Book Tag with some lovely friends. So would you like to introduce yourselves?
No. I think we're all old news at this point. I am Bruno. We don't talk about Bruno, much like Fight Club. So, but no, I'm Evie. My channel is She Was Only Evie. I read a whole bunch of different stuff, and what Angela tells me I can read in regards to fantasy. So,
I'm Katrina, aka Peppa. Don't make me mad, or I will rain on you. I do not have a BookTube account. I have a Bookstagram called The Diary of a Book Nerd. I read fantasy, sci-fi, contemporary romance, classics, a little of everything.
I'm Ariel, or the unperturbed capybara from a particular scene. I have my channel, A Cup of Books with Ariel. It's a little inactive right now. Someday I'll get back to it. And I read mostly fantasy, sci-fi. I'm reading a little bit of everything right now. I feel like I'm going through like trying to figure out what I'm reading period of my reading life. But yeah, that's me.
I'm Mirabelle, no relationship to Angela from Literature Science Alliance. I don't know. I read a lot of adult speculative fiction, but I also read other literary and historical fictions and things. Right now, my personality is the Chorus of Dragons 5-book series, however you call those. That's my personality at the moment. Also, all the people who like horses, book 2, horse culture. Very strong horse culture.
wait, is that the Jim Lyons series?
I have no clue if you should read it, Evie, but there's a lot of horses in book 2.
Uh-oh.
All right.
We'll see. And I am Louisa today. So, our leader, I guess. So the
put us
person
all on your shoulders.
Yes. So the person who created this tag is Passion of Eden, I believe. I'll link their channel down below in their original video and all of our channels down below. So go check them out. And we'll just jump right in. So question 1 is name a book that explores multiple family generations.
So I could go with probably the one that a lot of you, if you've read it, are probably going to go with, but I decided to do a different one. And that is The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. It's not like a whole bunch, like the purpose of the book is not to talk about multiple generations, but it's a sci-fi that takes the place over hundreds of years. There's a lot of like time, space continuum stuff. And the way that it starts off kind of folkloric, and without giving anything away, generations within that family kind of show up throughout this story. So I love this book. I'm so glad, Angela, that you and Wicked Good Books are the ones that got me to read this book. So this is fantastic. So.
It's so good.
Nice.
I wouldn't use it for this prompt, but it's so good.
So I almost went with the one that I think everyone here is probably going to steer clear from because we all thought everyone else was going to do it.
Well, eventually we need to say this book because I don't know if every one of us has even read it.
I'm like, what book?
The Inheritance of, or yeah, I knew she was going to have it.
I haven't read that one.
I haven't read that one yet.
I want to.
I've read it, but I didn't put it on my list. But yeah.
I feel like that's going to be the one most people gravitate towards for this question. I went with The Switch by Beth OLeary. So this is a contemporary, like kind of sweet romance, fade to black kind of thing. And it gives me strong vibes. If you guys have ever seen the movie The Holiday with Kate Winslet and Jack Black. So the premise is this woman and her grandmother live in England. The granddaughter lives in London, the grandmother lives in the countryside, and they switch places because they've just kind of had enough of their surroundings for right now. So not only is the premise reminiscent of the holiday, there are just a lot of sweet moments, especially if anyone who knows Arthur from the movie is one of my favorite characters. And there are some elderly people featured in this book. So it's very similar, and I loved it.
I went with, I don't know if I can get this to show, this is my struggle every time, Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. And I remember that it follows a family through several generations. I read it a while ago, and I think the main character starts in Korea and goes to China, or is it Japan? It's Japan. And it follows her journey and then like her children, and from there. It was a very moving book. It's not one that I don't like. I don't know if I'll ever reread it, but it was excellent. Like, read it at least once. I highly, highly recommend. But yeah, it follows like each generation of the family from that point on, and the hardships that they face, and relationships deteriorating and then coming back. And it's beautifully written. So that was mine.
You're on mute, Angela.
Sorry, hockey's about to happen. So that was going to be my answer. I love that book. I think I read it 4 years ago, and I still think about it vividly.
Same.
So like, I love that you follow this one woman going from Korea to Japan, and then you follow her children. And then I don't know if you get to her children's children in as much detail, but you really get the entire 20th century. And it was one of the first books that showed me, oh, this is stuff that was happening in the 20th century in Asia that I know nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and like sort of references to World War I and of course World War II, but also just the fact that even today there are generations of people from Korea that live in Japan that are not citizens of Japan. Like, just that concept. But I guess since she took Pachinko, I will just say The Inheritance of Orquídea Dvina, which I have gone on record saying that that's the adult version of this movie. That is the correct book to pair with this movie. It's more adult.
Or my other option was actually, I was originally going to go with House of the Spirits, but I know that the creator actually, that was their answer for this. So I was like, I feel like it'd be a cop-out.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, also, I think a lot of Anna Marie McLemore fits into this vein, too. But Inheritance of Orquídea Dvina is about a house with a lot of personality, which is like this house, and a grandmother with a past. And you basically are following her children and her children's children figure out what's happening with their inheritance and learning about Orquídea's past. And yeah. And it's about, meeting the expectations of family and what does it mean to find a new home and put down new roots. And it's great. And I really like it. And I really like, specifically as like a Latina who can't speak Spanish, that most of the Latinos and Latinas do not speak Spanish. That's not like what makes them Latinx. Like, that's not the defining quality. So I really like that book. I like Pachinko more. I actually want to reread Pachinko. I have a physical and e-copy of it. And I don't read chonky historical fiction like ever. But the love story at the beginning of Pachinko is so good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
That was one of my favorite parts of that. And then also the like how the relationship sort of progresses between that character, the mother, and her children, and like everything that happens there. That it was just it's masterfully done.
Well, it's one I need to reread because I definitely read it with a Western lens. So there were some like character decisions that I just could not wrap my head around. And I feel like if I read it now, I would at least be more understanding of certain character decisions. I think you might remember one I'm thinking of.
I think so. Yeah. Because I think that was one where I went, okay, that's a choice.
So speaking of the House of the Spirits, I went with Violetta by Isabel Allende. This is told in letters from a grandmother to her grandson and tells the story of her growing up and having children, and then how he came to be where he is. And they lived through pandemic, revolutions, all sorts of stuff. So it's really, really good.
Number 2.
All right. What is a book you enjoyed that took longer than expected to finish?
So that was this one, The Inheritance of Kadia Dvina. Like, it's not that it's slow paced. It's actually pretty quickly paced, I think. But I made the conscious decision to take it slowly so that I could really absorb this story. And it truly is magical. Like, it's magical realism, but like it's just. I don't know. I think if I had breezed through it, I wouldn't have liked it nearly as much. And me taking it slower, I was really able to like connect with the characters more and with the story and just the entire like writing style. And I don't know. I'm trying to get Angela to tell me whether I would like any of her YA stuff because I really just liked her.
And I've told you her YA stuff is extremely young adult.
If it's the same writing style,
that's different. Like, yes, she's still as good with forming sentences, but she also tailors her writing style to the young adult genre.
It's very tropey.
Yeah, it's
but I enjoyed the tropes.
I mean, I loved it, and I'm really happy you bought me them. But I don't know. I don't know your opinions on classic young adult tropes. Like, I have no clue. So. I don't know.
I don't read a lot of young adult, so.
Well, then you might like it because a lot of people who don't are like, this is so derivative. I've seen it a million times. And I'm like, shush, this is done very well and only in 300 pages. It is so economical.
So true.
For this one, I went with Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. And it's not a favorite or anything, but I did enjoy it. One of the reasons it took me forever is because it's like big, chunky. The other was the beginning I don't know, I could not get into the beginning. It took me a month to read probably the first quarter of this book. And then once I got past that, I read it more quickly. But this is probably one of the books that it's taken the longest for me to read. But like, I enjoyed it. I have the sequel. I don't know when or if I shall read it, but it was a good time.
I haven't read the sequel to that because I don't know if we're ever going to get a third book. So, so my answer for this was Alice by John Gwynne because I love this series overall. I would say in terms of the books themselves, I like the third, fourth, second, and then the first because there is like a period in the middle of this book where I just struggled to get through it because this was one of the first like adult like epic fantasies that I had dipped my toes back into after many, many years away from like these big like chonky fantasy epics. There's also a lot of, and I feel like I'm gonna like, I've tried to convince Trina to like finish it to get to the rest of the series, and I feel like I am not selling this right now. But like, there's also the beginning, like first half of this, there is so much like world building and like foundation laying that when you're reading it, you're just like, okay. But then as you get further into the book itself and into the series, a lot of that world building and foundational character development and all of that pays off. But they're definitely, and like I enjoyed most of it, but there was just like a chunk in the middle where I was just, it was a very, very slow read for me. But then I like went on and finished the entire series. So I did like it. It just, like I said, this is probably my least favorite in the whole thing, but I still like it for what it is.
It's so interesting because I think, so I read that book in 2 days and I don't like it as much as you. And the middle's my favorite part. Like I hate the first 50 pages and the last 50 pages I really didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
But like I liked the middle part because I felt like the middle part was like the only time I got to like invest in the characters based off how the writing was working. So
Yeah.
I didn't mind the middle, but
maybe it wasn't the middle then, but I know there was a chunk somewhere from like the middle to the end where I was just like,
I mean,
dragging.
I struggled in terms of wanting to read it, but I read it in 2 days because I'm like, I'm getting this done.
I like the rest of the series more. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I haven't decided when I'm going to pick up Valor or if I will. As time goes away, I wonder if I care. We'll see. I'm sure Katrina's in a similar position in terms of finishing the first book.
Buddy read, that's what I'm hearing.
No. My answer is Goliath by Tochiani Buchi. That book is only 300 some pages, 320 pages, which most books of that size I can knock out in 3 or 4 days, depending on my week, sort of thing. Like, that's not too bad for me. That book on my first read took me 11 or 14 days, and on my second read took me 11 days. So it just took me a long time to read, whether it was a reread or not. And that's just because, like, it's dense. It is dense and nonlinear. But I, on my first read, gave it 4 stars. On my second read, gave it 4.5 stars. So I really enjoyed it. But it was definitely a book I could not rush through. It was like 10 to 20 pages at a time. And I annotated it on my second read. And I really like it. But it's not a quick read. I think Stephanie knows that. Because I think you're the only one who's read it besides me.
To give context, this is a new release. And Angela read it twice in a 1 month period. So...
Yes, but it took me in that month, most of the month, to read it twice. No. I mean, I just, yeah, I like it. It's good. It's just like on your first read, you just don't know what's happening, which is why I just had to reread it again. Because I was like, now I know what's happening. Because like the first read, you're like, oh, I didn't even realize this was like the backstory of this character. I thought we were still in present time and you're not. And like, it's hard. I don't know why authors, when they do that, can't just give you like a tiny little date stamp. Like it doesn't make it less good. Just a little date stamp. Just right there. Right above the paragraph. Just go boop. These are my opinions.
I'm very glad that you read it before me because I was like, I don't know when this happened.
Yeah, I answered like all of your questions, or I just explained, oh, this is what happened in that scene.
I liked it, but it was confusing at times.
Well, it's your turn.
So mine is The Books of Jacob by Olga Tokarczuk. I started this in December, and I just finished it at the end of February. So
it's a chunky book, it looks like.
I know, but it normally doesn't take me like 3 months to read a book. But it's based on a true story of Jacob Frank, who's a false messiah. And there's a lot of very weird stuff. And talks about like religion, history, all that kind of stuff. But the first section is called the Book of Fog. And so it's very literal. Like I had no idea what was going on. But the rest of it ended up being really good. But it took forever because it's also one of those books you can only read small sections at a time.
The Book of Fog.
And it just made the Booker International long list.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of gimmicky with its, backwards numbers and stuff.
Well, yeah.
It has good content too, I'm sure. But, it's definitely one of those things that I wasn't surprised when it was put on the list.
Yeah. Well, and then too, like if you don't know Polish history, you also have to take breaks and look stuff up. And then they change religions a couple times. So when they change religions, they change their names. So that gets confusing. So it's just dense. But good. So number 3, name a character who has to do it all.
So, gonna say Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier, Sorka. I mean, I don't think it's a spoiler, but like, this is the retelling of the Six Swans.
Six Swans, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And literally the entire book follows her as she's trying to break this curse. So, but it's really, really good. We're in the midst of a read along for it. Hopefully the live show discussion for this book will be fairly soon. But I keep getting messages of people that have just started it and they're like, chapter 6, what the hell? and it's surprisingly brutal.
Yeah.
But it's I've said this to multiple people, and I will say here again for the internet to hear. Juliette Marillier, Robin Hobb, and Catherine Arden are like my new like this century holy trinity of writers because it's just gorgeous prose, and Juliette Marillier manages to write these really difficult scenes in such a way that you cannot look away, and it's still beautiful, but it's still so tragic and brutal and disgusting. But then at the same time, like there are so many sweet moments and beautiful moments in this book, and it stands alone on its own. So it's a one full arc within this book, so you can read it on its own. So
You're supposed to talk about a character, but you talked about a book.
Whatever, Sorka. I did say Sorka. But like I will just whatever, it's fine. I mean I can't say anything more than like it's 6 swans and she's gotta break the curse. Like that's the whole point. So yeah.
I just wanted to give you shit because I just heard you say all of these words about Robin Hobb like 30 minutes ago.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. Stephanie and Angela had like sobbing messages from me because I finished Royal Assassin. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, I sobbed at the end of that one too.
I'm a heartless person.
Like ugly sobbed.
Not a tear.
Okay. I just finished this duology, the Warcross duology by Marie Lu. And the character Amika Chen in this, she has accidentally found herself as a competitor in this virtual reality game called Warcross. She has glitched herself in, but she's actually just a bounty hunter for people who illegally bet on the game. And she kind of realizes there is a little bit more going on. There's kind of a conspiracy at the heart of this game. And because of the situation she finds herself in, she doesn't really have that many people she can trust. So she kind of has to do it all by herself. Even people she trusts. It's like they're very morally gray characters in this book where they may be doing some awful things, but in their head they're doing it for the right reasons. So she is very... I think this is first person too. Yeah, it's first person. So you're in her head and she's basically dealing with this by herself. But there is a really good friendship group in here, which I like. So it's YA. It's a fast, easy kind of fun read. So that was my choice for this.
It's funny that Evie mentions like Holy Trinity because this author is probably one of mine. And so my choice for this was Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler, because this is set in a world where climate change and economic crisis has kind of led to a slightly, I guess you could call it post-apocalyptic because everything's sort of like falling apart, and the main character is the daughter of a pastor in a walled neighborhood. So it's a neighborhood that has walls built around it to keep scavengers and stuff out. And when you first meet her, she's in her teens, I want to say, and you follow her, like, I think it's like 14 to 18 or 14 to 19 maybe. And she just recognizes that they cannot rely on this walled neighborhood because eventually you either have to go outside and someone's going to potentially attack you, or a wild dog is going to attack you, or something, or the outside world's going to get in and take what you have, because that's kind of the rule of the world, is that everybody's just out to save themselves. And so she takes it upon herself to learn like so many things. She learns how to like survival. She learns, she starts learning about different plants and what you would find for plants in the Pacific Northwest that would be helpful to you. Or actually, technically she's in California and she'll eventually move up the coast. But so she just starts learning all of this survivalist stuff. And she tries to get her town to do the same, to prepare for this eventuality that they're not going to be safe anymore. And nobody believes her. They're all just like happy to be like, nope, what's happening outside the walls is never going to get in, and I'm fine and I'm safe and I have everything I need here. And so that was part of it. This, and I just have to say, this is actually my favorite Octavia Butler book that I've read thus far. It's technically an unfinished series because unfortunately she passed away before she could complete it. However, I haven't read Parable of the Talents yet, but you could also read this as a standalone. It has a full arc, in my opinion, like there is closure. And it also deals with a lot of brutal subject matter. But it's not done for sensationalism. It's done because this is probably what would happen if the world as we know it collapsed. And it's just recognizing that humans are human. And, and we can be driven by animalistic tendencies in a lot of ways. And so, like, I devoured this book. I read this book in, like, 2.5 days because I just, like, loved the main character so much. And the other thing is she doesn't know it at the beginning, but she's essentially creating a new religion of her own based on things that she's taken and things that she's experienced. And so each of the chapters, like, starts with, like, her own, like, writings from her books of Earthseed, which is like what she calls her religion. And that's not a spoiler. It literally happens in the first chapter, but this book is just amazing. And this is probably one of my favorite main characters in literature because it's just, if you haven't read it, definitely recommend, but look up trigger warnings because there's a lot.
I love Octavia Butler. I'm so excited for Angelina to read Dawn in a couple months. It's gonna be great.
I have to read that one.
But I've always been so nervous about reading Parable of the Sower because from everything I've heard about it, it hits, especially, in 2020, it hits very close to home. It's very,
I think it's Parable of the Talons that's closer based off reviews I've heard recently.
Okay.
Yeah. But regardless, it's Octavia Butler, so it's going to be dark as hell because she has no faith in humanity ever.
Well, there are moments in this one, though, where that's she kind of counters that with, like, these moments of beauty or these moments of humanity or these moments of someone helping someone. So I agree with you, especially in thinking, like, of her other books that I've read. I actually don't think she does that as much here. Like, she does, but I feel like she counters it a little bit, too.
I've only read the Patternist 5 books and Kindred.
Okay, yeah.
So
I mean, same. I'd only read Wild Seed and Kindred before I read this one. So.
Oh, yeah, and so you haven't read Clay's Arc?
Not yet, and I've heard that one's
Clay's
rough.
Arc, she does not think, and it's actually not even humanity's fault. That one's so dark that when people say they can't finish it, I don't blame them. And then I judge myself for reading it really quickly and liking it. That I feel gross for liking that book. It's disgustingly dark. I told Stephanie she would like my answer to this. The name of my character, who has to do it all, cannot be stopped, cannot ask for help, cannot lean on others. Rand al'Thor from Wheel of Time. He must do it all. He cannot lean on anyone. He cannot ask for help. He must. This is not a good thing. This is a horrible trait in a chosen one. No one liked it when Harry Potter did it. I don't like it when Rand al'Thor is doing it. It's not great.
I really thought that was going to go in another direction.
I went positive on my own version of this tag when I had, like, a bunch of my favorite female characters who have to do it all. But no, Rand al'Thor. He really is like, I have so many things I have to do. And, like, yeah.
I'm the only one that can do it.
Literally, it's so frustrating. Yeah.
So
like, it's to the point, Evie, where in the 9th book, he asked someone for help, and I was so proud of him. Like, irrationally proud that he asked.
Character growth.
He also asked the other character in Wheel of Time that was the runner-up for this award, Nynaeve. Nynaeve is runner-up for this award in Wheel of Time of person who has to do it all.
Oh,
I'm not going to explain what Wheel of Time is. If you want to know, find out. Everyone has a Wheel of Time video from last fall.
Yep.
Oh my god. So I picked In the Roar of the Sea by Sabine Baring Gold, and it's a Victorian novel that I had never heard of till last year, and it's kind of based on true events, but we follow this girl Judith, and she has a brother, and he's got some kind of like learning disability or something like that. And after a tragedy happened, she ends up having to take care of him and live with her horrible aunt. And this pirate, who everybody calls Cruel Coppinger, ends up falling in love with her and basically blackmails her into marrying him. And it goes from there. So she has to do all she can to save her family. And at first it sounds kind of cheesy, but then like halfway through, all these plot twists start happening. But throughout the whole thing, she pretty much does everything by herself. So she's a super strong character.
Who's it written by again?
Sabine Baring Gold.
Okay.
I think he was a priest or something like that. But it was 5-star read for me, and I was not expecting to like it that much.
I'm just very disappointed that no one picked Ren from Mask of Mirrors or Liar's Knot, because that's her personality, is having like all the personalities and doing all of the things.
I know, but I
I
assume that you're going to use Mask of Mirrors, so I don't use it.
I am not. I didn't, because I used it in the tag when I did it on my channel. I used it multiple times to the point where Laura was calling me out. Like, how many times will Angela put Mask of Mirrors in the Encanto book tag? The answer last time was 3. Okay?
It's that good.
I'm like trying to think of what you used it for.
I used it for number 2, I used it for this one, and I used it for number 8.
Okay. Yep.
So number 4, talk about a book you haven't talked about. Bruno.
I mean, technically, I just talked about this book, but I literally just finished it today, like less than 2 hours before this live stream. Well, recording, whatever. Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. Not as emotionally devastating as the first book. Like, these are not all of these pink tabs are emotionally devastating moments to the point of like panic attack inducing level like sobbing, like how
that's the bar
in Assassin's Apprentice. There were two of these are that level. But it's I'm so in awe of Robin Hobb and all my little tabbies, and it's just oh god.
I don't think this is correct for this answer from you. I'm calling bullshit because you've literally made a Voxer chat to talk about this book.
Hey, I talked about it with you guys.
I don't know. Talk about a book you haven't talked about. That's the...
Listen, I don't do anything other than like discussion stuff anymore, so I literally could have picked anything, but I'm like, I just finished this, so I want to talk about how I sobbed like a baby at the end. So
that's fair.
I chose another YA book. I don't know what's happening to me today. I chose Crown of Feathers. I mostly chose this hoping that will kick me in the butt to keep reading this series because I've only read book 1. But this is about a girl who wants to become a Phoenix Rider. As pictured here on the cover. And it has a sibling relationship, an interesting one. It has an LGBTQ plus romance. It's multi-POV, really fun. However, this got a lot darker than I expected it to. There were some moments I had to kind of close the book, put it down and be like, did they just go there? Like, it was a little intense for YA. Very well written though. And there's a scene at the end, kind of this climactic scene that I thought was really well done. I don't want to say too much to spoil it, but yeah, I'm hoping to read book 2 of this very soon and finish out the trilogy.
Let me know when you do, because I'm in the same boat. I read the first book and own the next two and haven't
Mhm.
touched it. So I don't think I've talked about this one, but I picked The Chosen and the Beautiful by Nikki Vo, which I may not be saying correctly.
I think
This
it's Nevo, but I
Nevo. Okay, Nevo. And this is a Great Gatsby retelling with some magical realism elements added in, and I loved it. Which is just, and I say that because I don't like The Great Gatsby, the original, and I also am not necessarily someone who will gravitate towards magical realism. Like, not that I dislike it, I just don't tend to pick those books up. But this, I mean, this is pretty much a beat for beat retelling of Great Gatsby, but in my opinion, more. And the prose is just beautiful. And it's short, which was
This is
always
this is
fun to
good
find.
know. I have it on my Kindle, so this is great information.
It's I loved this book so much. I don't know what it was. It's like I said, the way that she weaves in the magic was really beautiful. There's like this, the main character has this like paper magic where like she can basically create things with paper and they come to life,
That
which was
reminds me of
really interesting.
Kim Liu.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, but
Oh, I didn't know that.
it's probably a part of. I think he even said it was part of like this Asian mythology thing. So
Yeah.
Nevo's Vietnamese. So.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
it,
Yeah, I
and
think
she
I think that was in the author notes.
I mean, that sounds about right to me because I honestly like paper and paper magic in Vietnamese culture, Chinese culture, Japanese culture, I think is fairly common. I think it's Japan, like a gift of paper is actually like an extremely thoughtful, honorable gift. I may be mixing that up. I just know it because I experienced it where off topic, I was a server and I waited on, I think they were Japanese, and they were visiting from their country, and apparently they just really appreciated my service because at the end they tipped me, which was awesome, but then they also gave me this really beautiful paper postcard, and someone told me that for them to have done something like that is like a huge deal, and I was just like, oh, okay. I might be mixing up which culture they were from, so it happened also like 10 years ago. But anyways, so this book was just, I love this book a lot. I was surprised at how much I loved it and enjoyed it. So
Have you read anything else by Nevo?
no, but I want to. I had never picked anything up, and this was literally, I was in the bookstore, I had like a gift card or something, and I was like mostly buying used books, but I treated myself to this one also because the cover is just beautiful.
Yeah.
Because I know she has like the Empress of
Yeah, she has 2 novellas.
The third one
So-
comes out this year.
But I thought that one was a novel. I thought
She has a
had
novel too. She has
Oh,
a novel
okay.
coming out that's Hollywood with it's called Siren Queen, and there's a
Yep.
third novella in her novella series.
I didn't know about the third novella, but yeah, I want to basically
It
read
has like
anything
hippos
she
or
does.
something on the cover. Exciting. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Am
literally
I
want to
allowed
read
to write-
everything.
Or am I allowed to read Nevo?
Yes.
Angela. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I think definitely an Evie book.
Well, I mean, I haven't read Chosen and Beautiful, so I'm basing it off the novellas. But she has a more of a literary style-ish.
Yeah.
Like it's more intentional in her writing style.
Mhm.
Mine's hard because even books that like I read before BookTube, I talk about on my channel in some way. Like there are very few books I haven't talked about like at all. So I think I'm just choosing the one that I really don't talk about much at all. And I had to choose between V.E. Schwab and Cassandra Clare. Because those are 2 heavy hitter authors that I have read that I never talk about. But I think I've actually, well, I don't know if I picked V.E. Schwab for one of these prompts, but I think we've like talked about her in one of the tag videos. So I'll go with Cassandra Clare, specifically the first trilogy, because that's the one that came out when I was in high school. And so I read it as a high schooler with City of Bones and City of Ash and whatever the last one's called. And it was fun and really easy to read, but I hated it. I was so angry at it. I was so mad. I don't think it's a spoiler anymore because it's been out for so long, but I don't like the trope that was used for the romance. I disliked it a lot.
Yeah, I
I
agree
didn't
with
like
you.
what they did to her best friend. I thought that was dirty. Just didn't. When I went into Goodreads in 2016 to rate books and then retroactively rate books, back then I only gave books 5 or 4 stars. I gave a lot of those books 2 stars.
Did you read beyond the 3?
Because I went to college and then everyone was reading Hunger Games and my roommate was reading the other ones, but I'm like, I didn't like what she did with the first 3. So, and I know it gets better, but I'm not like a young adult reader anymore.
Right. Yeah. I was just curious because you were like trilogy. And I was like, wait, there's like.
I know there's like 4 series in that world. And I know that like some are historical and some continue with modern.
That series has like 3 or 4 more books after the first 3. Like,
yeah,
not even
I don't
going
need
into
to ever
the other
see
stuff.
the main character or Jace ever again or whatever the friend's name is. His name's Simon. I don't know.
Yes, yes it is. I read all of those when they were like coming out.
I was gonna say you've retained a lot of the information in that book.
Jace is like, it's the definition of enemies to lovers, and then like, oh shit, are we even allowed to do this or is it taboo? And I'm just like,
yeah, it was annoying.
Also, the covers, it's so funny. Like, you know, we in the United States right now are having such conversation of what is appropriate for children. Those covers were romance novel covers. Like, they were just
They
torsos.
were. Do I have one?
Oh, mine are all back there.
Yeah, I don't know if the new ones are as fun as the old ones, but the first one is Jace shirtless. He's 15 or something over this city, just like 6-pack.
I think I got rid of them.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I don't know plot-wise. I don't have a lot of things. Like, I know some of the major beats. But the thing is like, there's only room in my life for one author who does stuff like that, and that's like barely Sarah J. Maas at this point. I can't have multiple. And like, she's getting it close for me.
Yeah.
So, all right, Stephanie.
So mine is a manga. It's My Brother's Husband by Gengoro Tagami. And it's about a dad and his daughter, and the father's brother just died. And one day, his brother's husband shows up, and he didn't know that his brother had a husband. And in this culture, homosexuality is not really talked about and is kind of frowned upon. And so it's the dad kind of coming to terms with that, and we learn more about their relationship. And there's 2 volumes, and both of them made me cry. But it's such a really sweet story. And I read it before I joined BookTube, I think. So I don't even know if I mentioned it on my channel, but it's really, really good.
Side note, what is the name of the main character in the Mortal Instruments? Because apparently I remember everyone else.
Clary. And
what's the name of the author of this series?
Cassandra Clare.
Okay. Just checking.
Fun fact. V. Schwab does it too.
Yes, and V. Schwab was also on this list, not for positive reasons.
No, I'm 100% with you.
Number 5. Name a book that you thought would be light and fluffy, but hit emotionally.
So I apparently have just gotten into middle grade, and my first middle grade was The Girl Who Went to the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. And it's just, how is this written for like middle grade kids? Like, I can see actually how it was and why it was, but this appealed to me on an adult level in so many different ways. And it's just deals about like motherhood and how that takes forms in different ways, and you know, just growing up, and it has awards for a reason, I think. And
I just think you secretly really like middle grade stories. Between this and Encanto, like, you just need to read more.
It's true. So actually, I wound up getting like her other middle grade books. There's like The Witch's Boy and The Ogress and The Orphans, which just came out. And then she also has like her first adult novel coming out later this year, called When We Were Dragons. Apparently women spontaneously turn into dragons or something. I don't know, but
I just learned about that. Yep.
So I just want to I loved this. I will be rereading it multiple times. So, and I don't even have an excuse to be like, oh, it's because I want to read it for my kids. No, I just want to read it for me. So
I had to look the adult book up real quick. I chose Evelyn Hugo for this. I don't know what I thought I was getting into. I thought it was going to be just like a contemporary, just kind of fun time. I don't cry when I read. I bawled a few times during this. And I love the relationships in this. Oh, if anyone doesn't know, if anyone doesn't know what this is about, they've been like living under a rock at this point. But a woman recounts her life story, and she is kind of reminiscent of the classic old Hollywood actresses like Marilyn Monroe or something like that. And she tells the story of her 7 husbands, and the relationships and the things that she deals with hit me a little harder than I thought they would. And I don't know why. I also I love old Hollywood movies in general. So reading this was really fun for me. When I was done with this book, I was like, wait, this wasn't a real person, was it? I had to go look to make sure, because it was just written so realistically. So I really loved it. I actually think I want to reread this soon, which I'll probably tab it up and like write in it stuff.
My mom is not a reader, and she read that book and loved it.
It's so
It
good.
was so good.
So this one's gonna kind of be a weird answer, but I chose Finley Donovan is Killing It, which is weird to say it because this is ultimately about murder. But so the story follows Finley, who is a divorcee, and she's a writer. And the whole thing is she meets her agent at Panera, which just cracks me up already. And they are talking, and she like writes like mystery, like murder mystery books. And they're talking about her next book. And this random woman in the Panera thinks that she is a hit woman and tries to hire her to kill her husband. So that's ridiculous. So like it is a ridiculous book. But the other side of the coin is that Finley is struggling with the fact that like she has like no money. Like she's exhausted her advance on the book that she's writing. She has 2 children who are both very young. And so she's trying to manage that. And like her husband takes them on the weekends and then complains about like having them. And she's also like struggling to pay her bills. And she has a nanny who just got like fired. And there was something about her struggles as a single mom and writer and just like human trying to make it through a day that just for some reason, I don't have children or anything like that, but it just everything she was dealing with outside of like essentially being mistaken for being a hit woman just hit for me in a way that was just like, I don't even know. It's just, thank you, Evie.
I can resist. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I would have done the same. But yeah, so kind of an odd answer, but yeah, I also recommend this because it is also just absolutely ridiculous, but a lot of fun, which again is weird to say about murder, but
Nothing like a good murder.
Yeah. I struggle so hard with this one, mainly because I don't usually pick up light and fluffy things. And when I do, they normally are light and fluffy. Like, I don't normally miss the mark there. So I think, and then some then hit emotionally, which not everything hits emotionally. Okay, so I think I'm going to go with the one that was just way darker than I expected, and I really like the book, and I'm excited to reread it, so I don't know if that fits the prompt, but here we go. And that's Midnight Robber by Nalo Hopkinson. So this is not her first work, but it's one of the earlier ones that came out in 2000. And when you read the story, it's about like the carnival legend of Midnight Robber, but on this alien planet, and there's these multi-universes, and Tantan has to go on this adventure because she ends up in this parallel world. And it doesn't really explain a lot on the back of the book. And I was just like, ooh, speculative, Caribbean fiction, let's go. There is like on-page graphic stuff that happens to this poor child. It is not good.
Makes Octavia Butler seem tame.
I don't know, same level. Well, maybe I've read Clay's Arc. Remember, I've read Clay's Arc, so If you haven't read Clay's arc, I don't know if you know how dark she can go. But no, there are lots of trigger warnings around abuse to children, and they're graphic and on page. But also there are really sweet, tender moments between this girl who is just trying to make it and still take care of her father, who is horrible. He is one of my most I hate him more than Kyle Haven. Okay, guys, like, and we all know how much I hate Kyle Haven. I hate this man more. And she like is trying to take care of him. Like Tantan almost made it to my number 3 of woman who has to do it all. She becomes this legend. She like falls in love. She also has to, like, she's dealing with being pregnant way too early in life because of said things that have happened to her. Like, it's a very dark book, but it's also hopeful. And like, you see her form these connections and bonds, and I really like the story. But when I read the back of the book, did I expect any of this? No. And it's really well telegraphed. Like, once you're reading the book, you see the signs and you're like, oh no. Like, it's not like it's out of nowhere. You're just like, it's just not, it's a really bad adults around children. It's just not great. I really like the book, though. It is written in a Trinidad dialect, though, which I think also makes it hard for people to get into. And the audiobook is Audible exclusive, so you can't even get the audiobook from the library.
Of course.
Yeah. I'm excited to read Brown Girl in the Ring, which is also by this author, and I don't know what it's about, but I'm going in more prepared. But it was listed as young adult by my library, and I'm side-eyeing that a little hard. I'm like, okay, I don't think this was intended for young adult, but I'll read it. But if it is anything like Midnight Robber, it's not like a young adult audience can't read it, but it is heavy.
It was not that I'm saying that Barnes and Noble has, reliable shelving, but they shelved it in like the adult science fiction and fantasy. So,
I mean, Nalo Hopkinson, I've never heard express interest in young adult writing, and also that book was written in 1998, so that's like baby times for young adult. Like, we don't like, we have Harry Potter 3. Like, I mean, where are we at in young adult fiction at that point? Like,
this is why I appreciate Storygraph, because they have the content warning section.
Yeah.
I really like that feature.
And I like that you can have it hidden or shown to you, because like, like for me, if I don't read content warnings and I get triggered, that's my fault. But most of the time, even if I read them, it doesn't affect me whether I get triggered or not. So sometimes I just read a book and I'm like, oh, that happened. Okay.
Yeah. So I picked Emily of Deep Valley by Maud Hart Lovelace. This was for the Kindred Spirits Book Club by Kate Howe. And so I was expecting something really cozy. And it was cozy at first. So it's about Emily, and she just graduated from high school, and all her friends are going to college. And she decided not to, so she could stay home and watch her grandfather and help him because he's getting along in years. And I found it very relatable in that, all your friends moving away and you feel kind of stuck and you don't really have like a community. And she ends up kind of creating her own community, so it turns out very well. But there were a lot of emotional moments in here that were just super relatable, and I didn't expect it. It doesn't get dark, but it makes you feel things. So, number 6, characters who make you believe in soulmates.
What is a tag video without me mentioning this book at least once? Bear Nightingale.
I don't know if I agree with this, but continue. Let's see.
Not for who you think it is.
I don't know. That's why I'm waiting to see.
Soulmates, for me, are not necessarily always romantic, okay? Vasya and Solovey, they are soulmates.
Okay.
Vasya is a human girl. Solovey is a magic horse. Spoiler alert. But magic
or
horse.
a nightingale.
Well, I guess you could, yeah, whatever. Either way, they are soulmates, and they are... Even though Vasya has incredible connections with multiple other people, her relationship with Solovey is really the driving force throughout this entire trilogy, the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden. And I love them. I love them individually. I love them together. And it's just so good.
The more contentious version of this is the brothers. They're definitely soulmates, but they don't like it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
I struggled with this one. I don't know why, but I went with the classic Pride and Prejudice. Good old Darcy and Lizzie Bennet.
Yes.
Those are just, I was like scrolling through all of the books I've read, and I was like, I don't know. I like a lot of romantic pairings in books. However, I don't know how I feel about the term soulmate. And a lot of characters don't really fit that category. But I was like, yeah, these two, if anyone was going to be called soulmates, I guess they deserve it. So yeah, I struggled with that. That was the hardest one for me. I don't know why.
I kind of am with you because I simultaneously think, like Evie, that soulmates doesn't always mean romantic, but I also don't fully believe in them. But that being said, my choice for this was...
I love it.
That's great. Go you.
Because first of all, the two main characters of Olive and Adam.
I thought it was Ray and Kylo.
Well, Adam Driver plays Kylo, so there you go.
Yeah, I don't necessarily care that this is apparently Kylo Ren.
I don't understand it. Like, I get how the Adam character is like Kylo, but I do not get how Olive is like the other character. Like, I don't think they're the same.
No, I 100%. Someone told me this after I had read it, and I was like, that's incorrect. Even if the author says it, I don't believe it. Anyways, but mostly because the relationship between these two characters, I really like. I like that it's a very adult relationship to me, in the sense that I guess there's a couple moments of miscommunication, but it's not in the way that the miscommunication trope is generally used, which is one of my least favorite tropes in romance books. It drives me up a wall. But I also love the friendship between Olive and her roommate, and Olive and An, because that, to me, those were also like soul friends in a lot of ways. And so I just loved all of the relationships in this book. This book made me so happy. I already have plans to reread it this year. And it was just like one of those books that made me kind of go, I don't know. Everything felt very real to me in terms of the relationships. There's some other stuff in here, which actually I think this group has chatted about, that isn't super realistic, but like the relationships to me felt very, very real, which I really liked. So yes. If you haven't read it, recommend.
My real answer that I already used when I did this tag is Lyra and Will from His Dark Materials. Because that is the actual moment when I was reading fiction as a child, when I thought that, like, oh, you can find a person that you're like really compatible with, like, and it can form from friendship. And yeah, I don't know. I love them. But actually, my other answer is not romantic. It's middle game. It is the sibling relationship in that book, and literally nothing can keep them apart. It's amazing, and it's why I love that book. I think if people don't care about their relationship, the book itself's plot is not strong enough to carry someone through. I feel like most people who like middle game really like Roger and Dodger, and other people who are like, they're fine, but they are not like invested in this drama of, will they be together, are they going to be separated, because there's a lot of like weird stuff going on that keeps them apart, because there's magic involved, and they don't grow up together, but they have this kind of like telepathic bond that they discover one day. So they like think they're imaginary friends, and then something triggers one of them to shut off communication. And I was so stressed the whole book, purely because of these two people that were meant to be in each other's lives, you know? Mm-hmm. So yeah. It's the closest thing I've gotten. Also, the other answer, it's not a book. It's Pacific Rim, which I also think arguably platonic or romantic. But
I love that movie.
It's so good. Where's the book of it? Where?
Yeah. Also, unpopular opinion, I actually like the second movie as well. But
I haven't seen it yet because it just doesn't... It's one of those things where like I will one day maybe watch it if it's on a streaming service that I like happen to be scrolling through. But Pacific Rim, like, That's another one. And I think it's when it's part of a plot where like literally it's because you're in sync or like you're compatible that makes like a thing work. Or, I don't know. So those are all my answers. Because it is hard for me. Like these are like my only 3. Like I don't think I have like many others. So, because that's not like anytime I read like a fated mate romance book, I think they're soulmates.
I swear to God, if I hear the word mate one more time.
Oh, you will, because you're gonna pick up the next Sarah J. Maas.
I know.
You're not going to. You and I are a glutton for punishment. We're going to hope she gets back to the good old days.
Wait, have we, off topic, have you and I discussed House of Sky and Breath yet?
We discussed it in your Instagram comments briefly.
Okay, that's what, yeah. Oh, okay.
I also struggled with this just because I was trying to pick something different, but I'm going to be basic and say Jamie and Claire from Outlander. I just love their relationship so much, and they love each other so much. So,
is this the woman who forgets about her husband in the real time real quick in the past time?
She doesn't forget about him.
Yeah.
She's kind of dealing with the situation she's in, and then they happen to fall in love in the process.
But is this the suspension of disbelief portion of the first book? Kind of.
I mean, there's time travel, yeah.
Well, no, not that part. I just meant more like whenever I hear about this book, when people don't like it, they bring up how they can't believe she like moved on so fast.
Which is...
She didn't really move on, though.
I was going to say, she's there for quite a long time, from whatever. I've only read the first book in the series, and I've watched some of the show.
And she still wears his wedding ring.
Yeah.
That's weird. If her soulmate is not the one who gave her that wedding ring, she's an odd one. She's fascinating. Maybe I'll read the book just to figure out how she does these.
She's infuriating, but their relationship is lovely.
Particularly from, like, Jamie in particular is, to me, the lovely part of that pairing, because he is just...
the best.
Yeah.
Yes. Number 7, name a book that features rebuilding relationships.
So...
Oh, here it comes.
No. Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bastarrica. This is probably for anyone that's read this. We're like, what? Why is this the answer? So the whole premise of this book is that the world has something has happened where animals can no longer be consumed. So the global society has started farming humans for human consumption. And when I finished this, I was very divisive about it, but the more that I've thought about it, the more that I've liked it. And essentially, this follows a guy who is separated from his wife because of a tragic incident that happens before the start of the book. And it just follows him as he's lamenting about the loss of his wife, and he's trying to connect back with her in kind of a weird way. But it's so weird. It's so weird.
I've heard it's very disgusting.
I'm excited to read it one day. I'm like legit excited.
It is very disgusting. So essentially, there are literally 2 parts to this book. Part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is, I don't mind spoiling it. It's essentially a walkthrough of a meat processing plant, but with humans, which is disgusting. It was like, oh man, like I actually thought, I'm like, man, do I actually want to become vegetarian maybe? And then I realized, no, I like chicken too much. But but the thing that disgusted me beyond belief to the point that, so my husband actually read this with me, and he also was disgusted by a scene in the second part that I had to set it down, and I couldn't read it for a few days because it was too traumatizing for me.
Wow.
So remind me again, what are the relationships we're rebuilding? I think I missed it when you
so the main character, I can't remember the name of the main character, but him and his wife.
Okay.
after a tragic incident. So, yes.
This is not a Katrina book.
Yes, it's definitely not a Katrina book.
Mm-mm. Nope. Good to know. So I went with a self-pub, Shadow of a Dead God. I've read the 2 books that are released right now in this series. It's basically about it's a fantasy mystery. However, it's an epic fantasy mystery. So it's in a completely fantastical world. The main character, Manic Thorn, is a mage who has put himself out for hire because he decided he does not want to be a part of the political society surrounding the other mages in this world. And he unwittingly finds himself in the middle of this murder mystery, essentially, which it's really a fun read. But the relationships that he is attempting to rebuild throughout this series so far are with his mother and sister, who are also mages and part of the political society that he has kind of removed himself from. So he is essentially trying to make it out on his own as a mage who isn't the most talented, as well as keeping a connection with his family, even though he doesn't agree with what they're doing. So it's a very interesting book. I will say I didn't like the second one as much as I did the first one. Some of the relationships and characters I thought were going to be explored a little bit more were kind of pushed aside, which I was a little disappointed in. And there was some repetition that was a little frustrating, but I do plan on continuing because it's just a fun, easy to read. I read it really quick. It was fun. So, and I haven't talked about it. So there is my answer for that.
So this is the one where I kind of got interpretive, and I picked The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. Because if you haven't read it, it follows our two main characters. There's Stella, and I am so bad at remembering like the romantic interest character's name, but so there's Stella and
I think it starts with a C.
Is it a C? Hold on, I'm gonna just look it up. But basically, so our main character Stella is on the spectrum. I think she's Asperger's specifically. And so Michael is his name. Michael.
Don't know why I start with
You
a
really
C.
would have had like a really good chance if you just said Michael. Like that's what I always say. I always say Michael if I don't know anyone's name.
It's funny because I almost was like, is it Michael? No, that can't be it. That's but so Stella doesn't have relationships in the way that we would interpret that. And in particular, she struggles with romantic relationships, and she's from a slightly traditional family. And literally the first scene of the book, literally the first page of the first chapter, is her mother saying, "We want you to know that we are ready for grandchildren." And she's just kind of like, what? Okay. But she also doesn't want to disappoint her parents. So she decides to hire Michael, who is a male escort, to teach her to be in a relationship. And then the relationship builds from there. But I really loved how their relationship worked, and then how it led to her building relationships with his family, and just, I don't know. I just really, really liked how the relationships developed and how she re-examined what being in a relationship means for her, and finding ways to make, she makes some changes, but also I really appreciated how Michael, before he even really realizes what drives how she lives her life, he is so patient and kind with her and tries to make it as non-stressful as possible. And he tries to understand what things kind of set her off, and it's so lovely because he doesn't realize that she has Asperger's for the majority of the book. And so he just, as a person, works with her. And so I liked how he worked on building a comfortable, safe relationship with her, And so, like, there's some things in the book that I don't like. Like, there is a miscommunication trope at one point in the book, and it drove me up a wall. And it's the only thing that kept the book from being a 5-star book for me. But I just loved how relationships were examined and developed, like, through that, because there's like what she thinks a relationship should be, like in the most like generic form, and then there's like, what does a relationship mean for you as the individual, and like how do you build that in a way that's comfortable and safe for you, which is kind of what I took away from it. So if you haven't read it, definitely recommend. I want to read the rest of her books too.
Well, I was gonna say, oddly enough, I liked Stella and Michael as individual characters, but I just did not understand them together.
Oh,
and,
really?
I'm like, and the whole point of a romance is to, like, you know, for the couple. And I'm like, I just couldn't. Yeah.
It worked for me.
My answer, and this was my weakest answer when I did it on my channel, so I'm really happy that I'm very happy with this answer. This is my superior version of this answer, and that's The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. There is many rebuilding, and it truly is rebuilding. Terrain was taken away from her home country to be a child soldier, and is then coming back to the country at the start of the book. And part of it is politically, they're trying to rebuild and reform relationships so that there isn't as much rebellion. They're trying to squash all these things. So that's Luca's trying really hard to do that. And Terrain wants to be part of the Empire, so she's working really hard to do that eventually. But then Terrain meets people that are kind of part of her family past. So then she starts rebuilding relationships with them. And then she tries to start rebuilding relationships with the other people who used to be child soldiers. There's a lot of rebuilding. There's a lot of burning and rebuilding throughout this whole book. And it's that the need to rebuild because things broke, because of the messiness of it, is one of the reasons I really like the story. Like Terrain and Luca constantly like have to reaffirm their relationship and like figure it out as like they each do things wrong and incorrectly. Luca more so. I don't like Luca as much as Terrain. So I think that's why I chose this one, because it really is on both like a global level and a personal level about rebuilding relationships. Because like Terrain meets her mom, and that relationship, it needs work. It needs a lot of work. And I like also, just as an aside, the author keeps joking that the title of the second book will be Terrain's Legs, and it makes me chuckle. Like
Is it because of her arms?
Well, yeah, that's like a big thing. Like people who love the book, we all talk about Terrain's arms, because in the book, Terrain's arms are like amazing. And the cover is, you know, just her standing. So she'll like Photoshop the old cover and just elongate Terrain's legs and just put her. It's just really funny. I just enjoy it. So
That was a really good answer. I didn't even think about that one.
yeah, because I think you've read it. I know Ariel DNF'd it, but I think you're the only one who's read it.
Yeah, I need to give that another try. I think it was a mood DNF. So
I
wanna give
do
it
not
another
judge
try.
if you don't like it. It definitely has polarizing reviews. I think it's a writing style mesh thing based off like all of the polarizing. Like I really like the writing style, but
And that was the thing. I didn't mind the writing style. I struggled to connect with the characters at the time. But like I said, I think that was more of a me thing. And it's just, I need to try it when I'm in a different mindset. Much like I'm planning to retry Jemison, which is why I'd asked about that the other day. So
yeah.
I think
No,
it's
I mean, Terrain is like the identity, like her not knowing her identity and wanting to fit in. It really resonates when you're mixed, I think. And like, so I really like hyper identify with like, who am I, like where I grew up versus like, who am I with my Venezuelan side? And like, I don't know, like the messiness of her thoughts really resonated with me. So I liked Terrain more than Luca.
Yeah, I agree.
I think Luca's a good representation of the quote unquote woke ally who wants to do the best, but also wants power. And how do you balance that whole mess of like, but actually, Bruno just told us something happened in the hockey game, and you probably heard screaming from my chat, and that is true. For those who are wondering, this is the hockey game on March 16th. When we are recording this.
Oh my god.
But no, I'm excited for the second book. I mean, not only do I think there's going to be more magic, but like I don't know. I'm excited to have terrain be a little more grounded and see what she does. I'm very excited.
Yes. So I picked A Crime of Passion Fruit by Ellie Alexander.
Great title.
Yes. So the main character, Jules, moves back home to Ashland in the first book. So she's kind of rebuilding all of her old relationships there. But in this particular book, she does like a temporary stint on a cruise ship, and her ex-husband is actually working on the cruise ship, and he did something terrible that ruined their relationship. And so they're kind of rebuilding as friends. And so it was kind of not heavy, but you don't really see that a lot in cozies. But I like that the arc continues where she's rebuilding and repairing relationships and things like that. So, and the last one, number 8, name a book that left you immersed in the culture.
Yeah, sorry, my cat has decided that she wants to play with the this makeshift toy that's hanging off the back of my chair. So if you hear scrambling, that's her.
Oh, yeah, good choice. Sorry.
Okay. Anyways, my choice is All the Horses of Iceland by Sarah Tolmie. It doesn't like follow a specific culture, but it follows across cultures from Iceland. Well, Iceland of the, I think, 10th century, 9th century,
9th.
Through to like Mongolia area, and it's just literally the story of the Icelandic horses and where they, like their ancestors and where they came from, and the man who goes to trade for them. And it's a very short book, and it I think it is mismarketed. It's marketed as a historical fantasy. It is not fantasy. I mean, there are fantastical elements, but I think
they're in a rough place there. If you say it's an historical fiction, there's too much magic in there to give to a pure historical fiction reader.
True. It reads more like a travel log, like Marco Polo type travel journal, I think. And it's just, I really like it. I will be reading more of Sarah Tolmie's works, and I'm very excited about it. So,
no, the culture descriptions in that book are A+, and like I loved traveling the Silk Road, and I hate traveling stories on average, and this was like so cool because the people that they meet and the way that in such a short period of time you like get a good sense of the tension of the area, the politics and religion of this person you're talking to. And I loved how diverse the people were that we met, because you just never learn about the diversity of Northern Europe, Eastern Europe, into Asia. Like you just never, it was really cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And it's about horses, so.
It's barely about horses. That's what I warned you about. I'm like, there's horses, but it's not.
It was enough to draw me in, so.
So speaking of niveau, we were talking about them earlier. I picked Empress of Salt and Fortune and The Tiger Came Down the Mountain. I've read both of them now, and they are probably the most interesting written novellas that I've ever read. I don't even know how to pinpoint exactly what they're about, except there is this character who is traveling this Asian-inspired world, and they are transcribing certain folklore, stories, things that have happened to people in this area. And the traditions and I wouldn't say religions, but the belief system is very intricately written. I can't speak today. Very well written. And you do feel immersed in the culture when you're reading these books. It's a mix. It's like reading a fairy tale, a folk tale, something like that. The second one was kind of wild, though, I will say. I think I enjoyed the first one slightly better, but I am excited for the third one to come out. So, Ariel, I recommend you read those.
I definitely need to.
I don't know which one I like better. I like the second one because I like the tension of tell a story or you die. Like I like that.
That was
It's
That
just kind
was
of fun.
kind of
Like it's very
crazy.
Arabian Nights, right? Like remember the
Yeah.
like
It-
but the first one I think I understood in such a weird way the culture so much more in depth, even though it was like this big and we like literally do not get it cohesively, but I understood the
No.
politics somehow.
There's so much packed in that short little novella.
But it
It's
doesn't
crazy.
feel like it's choppy. I don't know. It's masterful. It's really good.
Mhm.
That sounds like P. Giselle Clark's novella that I read.
Which one?
I read Black God's Drums.
Oh, I'm reading that right now.
I loved that. And I'm someone who used to not like novellas. Amateur.
Novellas are awesome.
They
Novellas
yeah.
are awesome when they don't try to be shorter stories.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. When they still encompass the narrative structure of a novel, but just concisely is kind of
And
how I
it's
look at it.
funny. It's funny I say novellas are awesome because I rarely rate one over 4 stars.
Mhm.
But I think just because there isn't enough page time to really go in depth with characters and plot, but I still really enjoy them. I guess I rate them on a different scale. I don't know why.
So mine is a YA book that it just came out last month, and I actually was able to read an ARC via NetGalley. But I am on the hunt for this book in real life because none of my bookstores have it, nor can I order it, and it's driving me up a wall. But it's The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axio. Look at this cover.
I want to read that one.
You can
Like-
find it on Blackwell's
Oh, really?
or Broken Binding.
Okay. I'm also on a book buying ban, so I have to go where my gift cards or credit are. So, but I will eventually own this book because, okay, so I also think that this book is getting overshadowed, and I have not read it, so I'm not saying it's not necessarily valid, but Daughter of the Moon Goddess, very similar cover, and I don't know, they just...
What's
The
weird
cover-
is they're different age groups too.
Yeah, but I feel like for some reason I
Well,
hear
they're
more
also
about
both
that.
mythology retellings.
Exactly.
There's a lot that's overlap. They're both Asian
Yeah.
mythology retellings.
Yeah. So this follows our main character, and she basically comes from a society where every year they sacrifice a woman to the god of the sea to be his bride in hopes that they will get him to come back. Like, because he's sort of abandoned them is their sort of what they think. So she ends up in the spirit world. And I don't really want to say much more than that. I will say a lot of the book like synopses that I've seen compare it to Spirited Away. That is both accurate and inaccurate. It's accurate in the sense that your main character goes to the spirit world and is a human in the spirit world and has to navigate the spirit world and like being in the spirit world and protecting themselves in that sense. But the story is very different.
Yeah.
But it does feel like a Miyazaki like this feels like a book that Miyazaki could take and turn into one of his animated films, to me at least. I will say when I first started reading this, I was very like, oh no, because the first couple chapters are rough in the sense that they just drop you in with zero explanation. It's very YA at the beginning. But then once you get through those like kind of initial chapters and you're in the spirit world and after the initial encounter with one of the first spirits, I don't know what changed, but it just swept me away and it immersed me in this like Asian inspired, I think it's Japanese inspired culture.
I think it's
And
Korean mythology.
Is it Korean? Okay, my mistake.
Well, I've been watching a lot of reviews on this book lately.
No,
for
I
a video.
appreciate it. I appreciate you correcting me because I want to make sure it's, you know, I'm saying the right thing and not doing a disservice to the book. So thank you. But I also loved like the, there's a focus on ancestors and the spirits of ancestors and like how those cultures kind of honor those folks who have left. And I don't know, it just was I just like ended up absolutely loving the book. It swept me into its whole mythology. It swept me into like the way that things were approached by I don't know. Stephanie, please read it. It's beautiful.
Yes.
If anyone else wants a like fairy tale retelling or mythology retelling,
that
it's
sounds
so good.
really appealing. Like,
It's also pretty short. It's only 330 pages.
Yeah, like I said, tried it like that first chapter. It's just the first like chapter or two, they're just kind of rough. But once you get through that, and they set up necessary things, that's the other thing. But they set it up like the first chapter is like quick and dirty. Honestly, like it's just like, here's the world, here's the problem, here are the relationships, and here you go. Like, but like once you get to the spirit world, it gets really interesting and just yeah, I just loved it. I need to own it.
The one so the Roomies Digest had a review on this book, and when she mentioned The Spirited Away, she was like, like, it's not the same, but in some ways, like, because some people don't love how the plot jumps around a bit, or like the plot has a weird trajectory, which is not dissimilar to how Spirited Away has a weird trajectory, where like the situation changes abruptly and you just have to go with it. Yeah, like, that's very Spirited Away, where it's like, and also relationships develop very quickly. Like, you're in this world for only like 2 days and suddenly they're your best friends, or, you know.
That's where I would actually have to go back and look, because I thought that too. But then there's a part where it says she's been there for like a week. Like, she's actually there for like a month in total.
I just remember I didn't read the book. Someone said in reviews, like, they've only been there for a few days or a week, and suddenly it's like they could never live without her or something. Like, the found family felt a little fast for this one reviewer.
I can't answer that without spoiling something, so I'm not going to.
I'm preparing for my February release video, and so I watched a lot of reviews for it.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I liked it. I read it at the same time as Christine from Roomies Digest, because we both got it from NetGalley, because I watched her review and I was like, oh, that's funny. I also found like it gave me Howl's Moving Castle vibes too, in certain ways.
That's another story where just things happen.
Exactly. And you just kind of have to go, okay, this is what we're doing now. But yeah, I recommend. And like I said, I'm on the hunt for an actual copy.
All right. Mine for this answer is specifically Bingtown from Live Ship Traders. If we're picking a spot in the realm of the Elderlings, it is Bingtown. I would die for Bingtown. I get very stressed about Bingtown on a regular basis. Poor Evie has not met Bingtown. But the
Bingtown was mentioned.
Yeah, I feel like the world building in Realm of the Elderlings, like, culturally, is actually very immersive as a whole. But I love Bingtown and care about it so much more than the Six Duchies. It's not even funny. Like, I'm just like, I get so stressed about this place that like used to be like this frontiers land where everyone came together and is like slowly corrupting because of capitalism. Like, I get stressed. So whenever a place becomes a character, I feel like it's an immersive culture for me. But also, like, I understand the rules of the culture and why certain things are taboo or being pushed against. And it's also based off our culture a little bit. It's very patriarchal, like, and stuff like that. And like I said, there's a lot of capitalism. So there's definitely a lot of like direct analogies to like our world, but it still felt like a fantastical place with its own culture and rules and courtships and everything like that. And yeah, I really hope we get illustrated editions of the Live Ship Traders, not only to see the magical creatures and the boats, but to see Bingtown, because I don't normally like port cities. Normally you put me in a port city in a book and I hate my time. I don't know why, but a lot of books take place in port cities and I'm like, I get it. It smells. It's gross. Fine. Like, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's part of why I didn't like Farseer for a while, because the first book we spend so much time with Fitz as a kid at the docks, and I'm like, I don't want to be here. You are such a small child. Grow up. And then he does. It's great. But I love Bingtown. Anyways, go ahead, Stephanie. Take us out.
I second that. That was... So I picked Unmarriageable by Sonia Kamal. So it's Pride and Prejudice, but in Pakistan. And I really liked the way she took the story and immersed her Pakistani culture into it, and how she kept the characters' personality traits but made it work with, you know, her culture, and how her community is. So I just thought it was really, really good. And I highly recommend it. So, yeah. I think this is one of our shortest that we've ever done.
Who knows? You'd have to check the playlist to find out.
Yes, which that will also be linked down below. So, yes, that was the Encanto Book Tag. And thank you guys for joining me on my channel. This was always super fun. And yeah, we'll see you guys later.